We've all seen these videos where people are losing everything and they're asking for help and asking for aid and support. And then we also see videos like this, where good-hearted communities are coming together and providing aid for those in need. Well, at the same time, you have the government talking about how they don't have any money left over for FEMA to be able to support these communities impacted by the hurricane.
We are meeting the immediate needs with the money that we have. We are expecting another hurricane hitting. We do not have the funds, FEMA does not have the funds to make it through the season.
But yet they have billions and billions of dollars to send overseas and hundreds of millions of dollars to be spent here in America, but not on American citizens. Right here it says there was $300 million authorized by Congress for the Shelter and Service Program, which supports communities that are providing aid to migrants. And you had an additional $340 million allocated for competitive grants, which totals $640 million for migrant support. The Shelter and Services Program is administered by the FEMA in partnership with U.S. Customs. And the Emergency Food and Shelter Program is a FEMA-funded program, which last year spent $425 million. In total, there was $780 million that was authorized for the SSP and the EFSP. Not to mention currently the DHS is pushing for a nonpartisan bill, to allocate an additional $1.4 billion to the Shelter and Service Program. And here we have Mayorkas talking to someone in Arizona regarding the SSP funding for immigrants.
So what steps is DHS going to take to ensure that additional funds are distributed and that we don't find ourselves in this critical situation in Pima County once again?
We announced with the first distribution last week, we also announced a competitive process for the second tranche of funds under the Shelter and Services Program. We are going to receive applications.
I've heard several news reports where they're trying to make it seem like FEMA has nothing to do with the migrant crisis and that all the money FEMA gets goes to Americans in need during disasters. But that's not the case. FEMA plays a role with funding migrants, and law enforcement is lying about donations being stolen. This is a video from Mr. Guns and Gear, and he actually went to Tennessee to help out and document what people are going through during the hurricane aftermath.
I had received a report from people on the ground out there that, one of my viewers, that the sheriff there was attempting to intimidate the workers, particularly Linda in this case, and threatening to seize all of the goods that had been donated by all of you around the country to these people in need. I get a phone call from someone who knows Linda, and apparently she was in tears, and essentially the sheriff had told her that if she didn't leave, that she was going to be arrested and that they were seizing all of the goods that were donated.
The word that she had got was Linda was stealing a bunch of stuff, and that's why they cut it off, because it wasn't going through correct protocol.
And according to this video, there is multiple communities that have been helping out with the recovery, and yet law enforcement and the government came in and seized everything and took over the entire operation, claiming that there was no accountability for the donations. They were being stolen or misused. Is that the case? Most likely not. The sheriff in that county used that excuse to take over the entire operation. This is just a theory, but my theory is they're using this for political gain because the sheriff is an elected official. And if he can control this entire operation, then he looks good and that'll help his career for any other positions he wants to go for. So we all remember what happened in Puerto Rico, where there was a warehouse full of unused supplies. And after public outrage, the government tried to say that that was a backup warehouse in case an event happened again. However, people were still struggling from that disaster, and the government could have used that aid on the people who were struggling. And then going to Hurricane Katrina, FEMA had given away $85 million in supplies, but not to the Katrina victims. They said they were just wasting money keeping these supplies in warehouses. So instead of, sending them to communities in need who are asking for them, they gave them away. We don't know who they gave them to or what happened to them. We just know that the victims and the people in need in Katrina didn't get those supplies. Not to mention there was over $800 million worth of aid offered to the US government during Katrina, and it was either denied or just simply ignored by the government. And on top of the $800 million that was offered that got denied or ignored, over $700 million went missing. So we have a total of $1.5 billion that was just unused or unaccounted for during the Katrina disaster. We all remember COVID, this just happened. Out of the $4.2 trillion of COVID funds, there was about $300 billion that was either stolen, wasted, or misspent. The government has said that they are giving individuals $750.
Best I can do is $750.
This is the exact same scenario that happened in Maui with the Lahaina fires as well. Another example of the government doing the bare minimum for the people who work and pay taxes in their country. If only the government cared this much about accountability for funds and donations as they did with Ukraine. Before the Russia-Ukraine war happened, Ukraine was considered one of the most corrupt countries in the world. And this is a series of patterns of the government stepping in to take over the operation and yet mismanaging or losing all the funds that people work so hard to donate. There was even an incident during the Tennessee hurricane where there was a father and son helicopter duo who would fly around rescuing hurricane victims. And they were actually threatened with arrest for interfering with law enforcement. And this was done by the fire chief who was threatening them. I'm not sure if that particular county either elects them or appoints the fire chief, but remember, the fire chief is always either elected or appointed. I just don't know which one he was, but if he's elected, then this also makes him look better by spearheading this operation. I don't want to jump to conclusions. To give them the benefit of the doubt, maybe they're worried about their emergency helicopters interfering with the private citizens' helicopters and potentially causing a crash or an accident. I doubt it, because then they could all get on the same frequency and communicate like that to avoid any kind of collision. We don't fully know why the helicopter pilots were threatened with arrest for rescuing people. Here's a video of someone trying to fly a drone, and the government officials come by and tell them it's a felony to fly a drone to record the flooding.
That's your one and only warning. That's federal offense, okay?
Yes.
No more.
I get it, because sometimes if there's overhead operations, they don't want a drone crashing into a helicopter or a plane, but I don't think that's the case here. I don't. Why don't they want people recording and filming the efforts that are going on? The whole point of this video was to showcase you how the government has a record of misusing, mismanaging, and really losing funds during times of need. To send billions of dollars overseas to foreign countries and billions of dollars for immigration instead of helping out their own citizens.